Tonight on Firebase, enough is enough. I'm your host, Gary French. Welcome to Firebase. How many of you have ever looked at the political landscape of your state or the nation or even the world, and you've thought to yourselves this common question? Why does it seem that politicians lack, drumroll, common sense? Most of you, if you're like me, you've thought of that at one time or another. You ask that question, you ask other questions similar to that because you just simply don't like the direction that the state or the nation seems to be going. Friends, here's a news flash. America is founded on Judeo-Christian values and principles. And to doubt that or to even deny that is to deny history. There is daily news reporting that we hear and we listen to that's not so much reporting the news as it is pushing an agenda. And sadly, the agenda of the mainstream media outlets appears to be forgetting some key factors of our nation. Our founding fathers, because they like to tear down statues and try to rewrite the Constitution. They even want to erase American history. And here's a question. What can be done? Well, for one thing, you and I must be concerned, and we must be praying people who are concerned. But beyond that, we must vote. There's far too many people that are, like I call them, the old men sitting on the park bench feeding the pigeons or in the coffee shop drinking coffee that just bellyache about everything. They don't do anything about it. And if we're going to vote, let's make sure that we elect people who share and support our value of common sense, who support the Constitution, and who has the kind of values that would hear the voice of every citizen, regardless of whether they're left or right, political hacks or cronies or pundits. They're not interested in silencing those who disagree, but they want to hear your voice. Well, tonight on Firebase, we welcome a Kentucky Patriot who I really think has been the man who's decided enough is enough. And that Patriot is Jay Williams. He's a candidate for the Kentucky Senate in District 20, which is a new Senate district that has been recently created here in Kentucky. Jay, welcome to Firebase.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Oh, man, you've got like a radio voice there, the way you come across there, my friend.
Well, my grandkids love to hear it in the morning. I roar.
You know, Jay, I read recently in a Fox Digital News, and you saw this already when you came into the studio, and you said, oh, we're going to talk about that. And this is not one of those gotcha or aha moments, but it's just something that's out there. And this came out this week, and it's a Fox News, and what caught my attention, friends, is this says church-sponsored LGBTQ, and I think it's like I plus or whatever, Jay. It's a pride event that is promoting kids' activities and drag shows. And you and I, as God-fearing Kentuckians, would look at that and say, wow, who would ever thunk it? But what shocked me was that it's being held as part of the Capital Pride Kentucky in Frankfort, Kentucky, Jay, no less. I was stunned by this, and what got my attention is that they quoted you, and I really, really like your quote, and you're taking a stand, and your statement is not that of a politician that's trying to, wet his finger and stick it in the air to say, how should I answer this? But you answered it from your heart, and you answered it, I really think, the way Kentuckians would like for it to be answered. You said the left's sexualization of kids is wrong. This is emblematic of what we're seeing in some of the schools, the promotion of radical gender ideology, which my opponent, Teresa Barton, supports. Kids have enough to learn between math and science and English. We don't need activists trying to expose kids to their woke cultural agenda. I think that's spot on. Jay, what's your reaction to this, and how in the world did you hit the big time with Fox News?
Well, Fox News picks up on the issues. They like to do the reporting. This, not very often do you see a sign that says drag queens, beer, and kids, fun for all. And that's what one of the signs said. It's absolutely, utterly astounding that they would do that.
And it said it was a church that sponsored it. And it's like, that's what's stunning to me, that a church would sponsor this, which really is not a church at all.
Yeah, it's a different world down there.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Democrats in Kentucky that are good, common sense Democrats. A lot of them become Republicans. I always run into districts that are 2-1 Democrat, but then we have those woke national Democrats, and there are some of those here too. And I think those values that they share are why so many of the old Kentucky Democrats are becoming Republican.
Jay, I find it, I'm originally from Mississippi. I always like to tell people, I hand over my heart, I'm from the real South. But I'm stunned. I'm really stunned that the folks in Kentucky who are really, generally speaking, God-fearing, family-loving, common-sense people would allow someone like a Barton to even run for office or allow an organization to sponsor an event that is not only against the Bible, but it's against human culture, to say the least.
Right. Well, people are going to do what, they get out there and they do what they want to. But what we have to do is draw the line, okay,
Right.
and say this is right, this is wrong. We've all fallen short of the glory, but then we recognize it and change.
Yeah.
And we've had failing schools. They did it. When I was in the 90s, we did education reform. And guess what? Reading levels are lower now than they used to.
Exactly.
But suicides are up, and there's more confused kids about their gender. And I think parents are starting to wake up and realize what is being taught instead of reading, writing, and arithmetic.
That's a great point. And, I understand you've been in public office before, but now I would have imagined that you would have been in public office and say, you know what? I said enough is enough, and I would have reached that point where I said enough is enough, but you're going back into the water again. What's prompted you to run for office again?
Well, the 90s were a tough time, I think a pivotal time, and that's went there, worked across the aisle with people. We worked on ideas, not party. We made a lot of changes, got the first pro-life bills out, concealed carry bills out, freedom to ride without a helmet, a lot of different issues came to the floor, and the whole thing was transparency.
Right. I think that's the thing that I've noticed about you that I've admired whenever I've had that opportunity. And folks, if you take the time to really look at the candidates that's running for District 20, you'll see the same thing. And Jay, what I discovered is that you are a guy that you really love your family, and it's not just for a posing or photo op because you're running for office,
right.
and you love the Lord, but you also love this country.
Amen.
Do you see, or what's been an observation that you've seen with the country overall, and then with Kentucky specifically? Now
Right.
why you're thinking that? Because we have a super majority of so-called Republicans
Right.
in Kentucky, but it seems like the wheels are spinning.
Well, we go as a nation, we go along, everything's great, and then we have problems, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And our problems, for a great deal this time, were self-imposed by our governments at the state and federal level by not letting people work and just printing money. That's
Right.
going to lead, that Biden economy is going to lead to inflation. And so they created this district with nobody in it. I'm going to answer your last question.
Sure.
Nobody in it. I kept saying, no, I'm not coming back. I've really been retired for a number of years. But I got concerned about my grandkids, my kids, and I'm saying we need to start making things better. I'm a long-term optimist. I think a decade from now, 15 years from now, things are going to be great. But for the next couple of years, I'm afraid they're going to get worse than they are now, and we need to start making things better, because the sooner we start making things better, the quicker we can get to the other side of this disruption that we have right now that really is self-inflicted. There's no need for this.
And I like the idea that you say make things better. Now, some people are going to say, okay, Mr. Williams, make what better? And what will you do to make it better?
Well, my opponent in one of the debates said, well, there's nothing we can do about inflation. There's nothing we can do about the national economy. And for Kentucky, that's just not true. When I was in the 90s, we were the lowest energy cost east of the Mississippi, the second or third lowest in the nation. We're an energy producing state. The number one thing we can do is bring down energy costs. And if we just get our clean coal, our natural gas, our hydro that we got out there, we can be an energy-producing state. We used to export energy to the rest of the nation. The world needs this energy. The United States needs this energy. we can flip inflation around. We can reduce prices by unleashing our natural resources here in Kentucky. The resources are our people and the resources. And when we unleash our energy, have those cheap energy rates, that's why we have the big industries, the Toyotas, the North American Stainless, NASCAR, the primary metals, because of our cheap energy. So we can do that. And everybody says, hey, well, we're going to go to electric vehicles. Well, guess what? Back when I was in the 90s, we had excess capacity. Today, our grid is tapped out. How are we going to charge those vehicles?
Oh, that's a great. Back in the 70s, we'd all have flying cars by now, too, don't you? And everybody have a personal jetpack. I think that's always the push from the so-called progressives. And they like to use that terminology. And the terminology progressive, though it sounds good, means, oh, I've got the ideas, I've got the thoughts. And what they're really wanting to do is to push their agenda upon you and not use a common sense approach to any of the things that are going on. Well, friends, we're talking this evening with candidate for Kentucky Senate District 20, Jay Williams. And when we get back from this short break, we're going to talk about things like energy. We'll talk about the border. We'll talk about taxes, maybe veteran reform. We'll talk about people stealing his signs. When we get back after this break, don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Speaking this evening with Jay Williams, who's running for Kentucky Senate District 20 here. And if you haven't decided who to vote for, let me just not try to influence you, Jay Williams, but make sure that you go and consider somebody that would represent you. Jay, you were sharing some things before, and it really prompted me to consider some things, about energy, border, taxes, veteran issues. As a veteran, you can see my caps and things right there, and those are important to me. And you know what? We were energy independent under the previous presidential administration, but now we're not. What role do you see Kentucky playing in that on helping to achieve energy independence?
Well, we're an energy state. We have a lot of natural resources.
That's true.
Not just coal. We got natural gas. And most people don't realize we have more miles of navigable waterway than any state but Alaska.
Yeah.
All that water running down to the ocean can produce power. And we're the top of the TVA. Tennessee Valley Authority with the hydro. So we got hydro, we got gas, we have the cleanest coal in the world. It's absolutely ridiculous that we're letting all these other countries, we're asking Saudi Arabia and the dirty and letting China build a dirty coal plant every month. And we have clean coal right here in this district. The KU plant in Gent, it has zero emissions other than CO2.
If we're going to produce clean energy, especially here in Kentucky, the current governor was bragging about building batteries here. And I read a report where somebody needed a new battery for their Tesla, and it was going to cost them $24,000 for a new battery for the car. What do you do with the old battery? You have to have a landfill somewhere. Right. And how do you charge it? And why does it seem like there is just it seems like craziness wanting to go over the cliff to abandon coal and natural resources, and let's use a windmill. Let's have
Don't talk to me about windmills. Those windmill blades, they go into landfill, they never decompose.
Right.
I'm talking to people in the landfill business. They don't want those because they are real problems to dispose of.
Yeah.
Besides all the birds they kill.
In Europe, you'll see windmills all over the place, Germany especially, and with the windmills that are there, they do not, and solar panels do not produce enough electricity that meets the people's needs. And now...
Well, particularly if you look at Kentucky, we don't have billboards on our roadsides because of our natural beauty. We're the, in my opinion, the most beautiful state in the nation. And we want to put windmills on top of those hills. Come on, that is just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what else is ridiculous to me. How's this for a pivot for you?
Okay.
So we'll see how adept he is here, folks. Speaking of energy, what about the open border?
Okay.
What about a border issue? That concerns me because it seems like we're allowing people with impunity to come up through Texas and even into Kentucky now.
Well, the problem is with that open border It's really the cartels, the drugs that are coming across the border.
That's a great point.
That's coming through
Great
there.
point.
And the people are being used by the cartels to really destroy our nation. We have a drug problem, and that drug problem starts with an open border.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to solve. We solve the open border, then we can work on starting the treatment of our inside here. But you got to see, you got to stop the water coming in the boat before you can bail it out, right? Otherwise, the water's coming in faster than you can bail.
Jay, why does it seem people are so hesitant to recognize that? I mean, I've heard stories, and you probably know better than I, where people that have been elected, they're in office, and it's probably true up in D.C. and it's probably true in Frankfurt, that behind the scenes, away from their party leaders, they'll say things like, I'm concerned about energy prices. I'm concerned about open borders. But then the public mantra becomes, no, it's just let everybody in. Why do you think there seems to be a hesitancy from both parties to really say, we got to take care of these issues? And I don't mean that as a loaded question. It's just one from my heart.
Yeah, it's hard to say why. I know when I was in there, I was always about transparency, okay? Yeah. Is that you get the bills out on the floor, you tell your people one thing, and then you go behind a closed door and you vote some other way and you bottle up the bills. So what we need to do is get the bills to the floor. And that's what we did back in 98 when we ran a coalition, changed the rules. We got the bills to the floor, and I said, you can vote for or against it, but your constituents are going to see how you vote. And so when we get those bills to the floor and the constituents can see how they're voting, that's when we improve government. The problem we have at the federal level is, particularly with the border, is they don't vote on many bills. I mean, they keep them all in committee, and they have one omnibus bill every now and then. And in that omnibus bill, we have the military, we have the border, we have all this stuff in there. We got to go back to separate bills that deal with separate issues so people can see where you stand on that issue. That's how they hide their votes from their constituents.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're spot on in that regard right there. And one of the things is that there is not the transparency. One of the things that I've learned very quickly about you is that you're not about you being the guy doing this. Right. You're about the people of Kentucky. You want what's best for the people of Kentucky. Why should they vote for you?
I've worked across the aisle. And a lot of people say, I went down there and did this. I went down there and did that. I know from my experience, I can go, number one, January 3rd, I can go to work because I know I can't do anything without 19 other people. Yeah. Okay? In the Senate, you need to get to 20, and you have to work with people. Nobody does everything on their own down there. Nobody does anything on their own. You have to bring coalition. I built coalitions with a very diverse group of people over issues, and you build the coalition over this issue, your next issue might be a different coalition. You have to get along with everybody.
Yeah. So what you're saying that if a Democrat comes up, and on my show I've been pretty harsh on Democrats because I'm just a pro-life, pro-Bible, pro-American, pro-Constitution, and I've known a lot of Democrats that behind the scenes would agree with me, but when it comes to their public persona, they have to follow the party line. But here's what I've learned about you is that regardless if it's a Republican or a Democrat, if it's a good idea, if it's good legislation, if it's good for Kentucky, if it's good for the nation, you're going to work with that person. Right.
Oh yeah, you work with people, and I wish we were back in the time. I think at one point maybe we had Democrats and Republicans all shared the values that we have. But what has become the reason I'm a Republican is because they share the values of the people of Kentucky. I think that's why Kentucky has become a Republican state, because the people haven't changed their values. The parties over the years have shifted their values, and the Democrat Party is just out of sync with the people of Kentucky.
That's a great. I tell you what, I'd have to go ask the Owen County GOP chair, Carol Shelton, about that. It's like, why does it seem? And you don't have to answer this, but for me, why does it seem that the Democrats, more than other politicians, are out of step with the common sense approach and and what the will of the people want today? Is that just a rhetorical question? Can't be answered?
Well, I think you saw this in UK, in England too, but the Democrat Party has been the party of the elite. They want to say they're the party of the working man. This day, the
Yes.
Republican Party is the party of the working man. They're looking out to defend the little guy, the little business, and the party is dealing with a bunch of elite college professors or graduate students, and they're not in touch with common sense, everyday Kentuckians.
Well, I think you're spot on right there. I think that's sorely missing in our political system today. Before we go to this, our last break for today, I heard this the other day. It was an article, and I don't know if it was from this article that I read, but it was talking about Christians. Conservative Christians, and the left likes to call Christian conservatives as Christian nationalists, as if it's a, if it's a filthy, dirty word. And but I heard this, a well-respected evangelist, Mario Murillo, he likes to use the phrase Christian rationalists.
Okay,
and he's talking about common sense rooted in faith leads us. I'm going to have to ask you to think about that before we come back from the break. Is that something that's meaningful to you, being a Christian rational and your faith?
Absolutely. They say you can't legislate morality, but the only thing we legislate is morality. The question is, whose morality are you going to legislate?
That's right. You have to hold that thought. Folks, our program this evening is sponsored by Firebase Coffee. Go to firebasecoffee.com and order the best coffee you've ever sampled. We'll be right back as we conclude tonight's program with Jay Williams. Welcome back to Firebase. We've been talking this evening with a man that I like to describe as a real Kentucky Patriot. He's a Republican, but he's more than a Republican. And he is more than a Kentuckian. He's an American. And he's more than just an American. He's a God-fearing, Christ-honoring American. He's the kind of man that I wish every person in elected office would be. Understand that there is a God, that I'm not God, he's not God, and you ain't either. But we've got to understand that there are consequences when we put the wrong person, male or female, regardless of the party, when we put the wrong person in office. From this conversation this evening and what we've talked about even off camera, I really think Jay Williams is that right man for Kentucky for District 20 right now, and would encourage you to prayerfully consider him. We've talked about energy independence. We've talked about border issues. We made mention to taxes. We didn't get into the veteran issues, which are important to me. We talked about the drag show that's coming up in Frankfurt and so much more. We could spend our time talking about all those things and actually get angry about it. But here's a man, Jay Williams, who said enough is enough, and he's running for office not for his own personal accolades, but for you. Jay, would you take a few minutes as we wrap up tonight? You got about 3 minutes or less, and just encourage the people to not only vote, I think they should vote, but give them some reasons why they should vote for Jay Williams. And when they see your name, it's G-E-X, but it's pronounced Jay. Folks, that's his legal name, but it's pronounced Jay. G-E-X, but...
Well, you don't have to know how to pronounce it to vote for me.
That's
but
right.
you do need to know where the Markland Dam is in this district, and that is Jay's Landing. It's been Jay's Landing since the 1800s. The French came down, they say Jay, but no Kentuckian was going to say Jay, so it became Jay. Jay Versailles, we know how to pronounce the French language, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But so the family's been here forever. I was named after that family. But G-E-X, pronounced Jay. Don't have. I usually say just vote for the funniest name on the ballot. But the reason I'm running is because I was in the 90s. It was a critical decade. I was able to change some things by working with people all across the aisle, working to get things done for the people of Kentucky. We got the first pro-life bills out, first concealed carry bills out, the first freedom to ride without a helmet on your motorcycle. Your choice. Okay, we turned around the budget. We funded the pensions. We gave raises to teachers. We did a lot of things that needed to be done at the time to save our bond ratings and keep them up. However, I've been out since 98. I'm an IT guy. I'm in computers, doing consulting. And essentially, I just turned 70 last month and essentially was retired. And they created a district. When they did redistricting, they created 30 Republican districts, 7 Democrat districts, and 1 purple district that sort of leans Republican, and that's the district we're in, this 20th district. Franklin, Owen, Carroll, Gallatin, Southern Boone, Southwest Kenton. And people kept asking me to run. I kept saying no, but my grandkids moved in with us during this time. We got 3. I've got 6 children, 14 grandkids. I want them to live in Kentucky. I'm a long-term optimist. But short term, I think I'd like to tell you differently, but I think things are going to get worse before they get better. But it's time we go down there and start making them better. Number 1, inflation, jobs, the economy. When I was in before, we were the low-cost energy producer east of the Mississippi. Some people say there's nothing we can do about inflation. Hey, energy costs are a big part of inflation. We just go back to producing the power that we used to produce. And we need electricity. We need power. We can bring down the cost. We can put Kentuckians back to work. We can export it to the United States. We can export it throughout the world. We're an energy-producing state. So that was number 1 on my mind. The other thing is when you look at education in schools and you see where kids have gone, education has always been very important to me on that.
Jay, I'm going to have to, I apologize for interrupting you.
No, that's okay.
But listen, folks, if you want high taxes, less energy, and more of Nancy Pelosi, you'll have to vote for Barton. But if you want freedom and you want to see Kentucky succeed, you'll vote for Jay Williams. Jay, thanks for being with us this evening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this most recent episode. Click below the like button. Provide any comments that you like. Also, we will get back to you as soon as we can after you write to us at P.O. Box 39, Perry Park, Kentucky, 40363. Also, let us know if you like really good coffee, and we'll send that out to you as soon as we possibly can. What's the name of the coffee? Firebase.